Hi, I'm Robbie.
I'm Eoin, and from back home Maelstrom, and this is Tower Recommended.
I'll go first. My first choice is a giant box of The Pretty Things, SF Sorrow. I know this album since I was probably about 15 or 16 when I first discovered the album. Amazing, kind of late 60s, I think around 68. It was a band who were originally a kind of R&B blues band, and I've been a big fan of this band for many years. I was lucky enough to actually see them play in this very building. They played in Tower Records about 5 years ago. Since then, the lead singer Phil May has died, so there's not a chance of actually seeing them again. I've wanted to see them for a long time. It was recorded at the exact same time as Sgt. Pepper and the Piper at the Gates of Dawn and Abbey Roads. And I don't know whether, to me, this is definitely the standout album of the three. I love all of them. It's hard to say Pepper and Ting are bad, but yeah, this really stands out as one of my favourite albums, and definitely one I would recommend. And if there was a track I would pick, none of them are written on the back, but there's one, Trust. So yeah, trust in me and buy this record.
You're changing your mind as you go through time. You grasp the straws, there are written laws that say you must.
For me, like, this album's getting the kind of recognition that it deserves, and I think like people are kind of, there's a bit of like revisionism. People are like kind of really realising how important Whipping Boy have been on the Irish music scene. But even beyond that, like personally, like this album has been a really important album for me. You know, like I kind of grew up listening to the Smiths and stuff, and it's like, you know, you hear places like Newport Bagnall and all that kind of stuff. You can't really like, I don't know, relate to it or whatever. But I really related to this album. I used to listen to this album like, does solidly for about 2 or 3 years, just like on the way into work, on the way home to work, on the way into work, and me Discman, and it's just a really incredible album. I played with them, I supported them in a previous band, and just they're great. Fergal is just a great lyricist. Kind of has this kind of like this whole like kind of talking, singing kind of thing, which I was massively influenced by. Like if you haven't checked out Whipping Boy, haven't checked out Heartworm, it's just a standout Irish album for me.
Why say words that I do not mean? They'll only serve to.
I'm a big fan of krautrock, and there's loads of great krautrock stuff in Tower. These compilations are done by Soul Jazz Records. There's like, you know, all your big heavy hitters are on them, of like Can, your Noyes, your Hammond Dills, Michael Rotter. They don't always pick the most obvious tracks by the bands that are, by the big kind of name bands that are on it. And there's like, I don't know if it's on this one, but there's 4 volumes of it, and there's like confusingly volume 1 and volume 2 of volume 1 and volume 1 and 2 of volume 2. But it turned me onto a lot of great bands like Deutsche, Michael Bunt, Harold Grosskopf and stuff like that, Konrad Schnitzler, and it's like stuff you wouldn't have kind of heard of. And especially on this, which is the latest one that they released, is a guy called Alex, simply just Alex. He's like I've read about him, he's like a Turkish street singer that was playing around Berlin, and Can came across him and brought him into their Inner Space studios and recorded with him. So as soon as I heard this track, I was like, wow, this sounds like Can. And it turns out it is Can. But yeah, anyone that's like wanting to get into krautrock or even into krautrock and want to get a little bit deeper into it, any of these compilations are really good to get.
Times escape from skies, sink down to kiss sweet devils tired bliss.
Dig Lazarus Dig is like, in my opinion, Nick Cave's best album. Like he took a kind of break after kind of like doing all that kind of like Australiana records and stuff, and I am a big fan of Australiana. I love the Go-Betweens and I love Nick Cave, but he took a break and then just came back with this record, and it's just like an absolute animal of a record. Like it's almost like Joycean in its scope, really, like, you know, like has like Night of the Lotus Eaters and all that sort of stuff, like, you know, big kind of like heavy lyrical tunes, kind of moved away from, you know, Western kind of like tunes, you know, as in like Wild West tunes or whatever, into these big kind of big songs. Totally just hits the nail on the head. It just hits the mark every time. It's just great. It's not a bad track on it. For me, it really enlivened kind of my love in Nick Cave. The following albums have been great, but this is just the real touchstone for me. Influentially as well, like, you know, I take a lot from Nick Cave. I take a lot from his kind of like modernist kind of like lyrical structure.
And do the hula for the hungry ones with the lanes of throw-me tea. Get ready to shield your city.
Yeah, it's steady. And it's got a nice phone cover as well. Dig Lazarus, dig. What you get at?
Very good.
Do you like it?
I do.
I like it. You have it?
Oh yeah,
have it. And I like it.
Gleason actually gave it to me.
Did he?
Yeah,
no way.
When he worked for EMI and was stealing records.
Did he?
A couple of albums here, but I'm going to pick Traffic. Traffic's second album, Traffic, which was, I've been listening to this album since I was about 16. Like, I'm only 21 now, so it's not that long. Yeah. But a couple of years, about 5 or 6 years. But yeah, this was one of the first kind of 70s rock bands that I got into, and I really, really fell in love with this album, and like still repetitively listen to this like every time I'm drunk. So much so, like, I'm an obsessed Stevie Wonder fan. Jim Capaldi's amazing lyricist. Yeah, a big fan of this. Jimmy Miller produces the album. It's like their second album from '68 as well, I think. There's a big mix in the band. There's like Dave Mason, who I really like his solo albums, and he writes some beautiful songs on this, which is like big standout song is on this one is Don't Be Sad. And at the time he wrote his own solo album, and I actually contacted him on Facebook to tell him how much I loved his song on this album, and then a song on his own album that was called Could It Give More Than You Take. And I was kind of drunkenly thinking, was that because he had a hard time when he was in his band? And I wrote this big massive heartfelt message to him. And like about 6 months later, I was playing a gig and I actually got a reply from him, and it just said, no, it's not about Traffic. So, and someone told me before that he's a bit of an asshole, so if you're watching this, you are a fucking asshole. But anyway, still a bit of band. Traffic, second album.
Another like really important album for me is Björk's debut called Debut. I don't know how this ended up in my lap, but it's just like a really like just incredible album. Björk herself was like watching all those documentaries, went really down the rabbit hole with Björk, and she was saying about like how she wrote the record and like each song in a different venue, like in different churches. She was just going around Reykjavik, like writing in different spots, and you can really tell from like each individual song how they have a kind of different sound and a different kind of like meaning to it, a different feeling to it, that she wrote it in different places. I saw Björk in like Dublin in the Tree Arena there just before lockdown or whatever, and it was this absolute carnage. Like they had the big like Icelandic choir and out the front, and it was seated, and there was loads of like just Irish people trying to get by them with like points and all that kind of stuff. And it was just like mayhem, like, you know. And she was like, no photos and no like this and no cameras and all. And like fair play to her, like she's a really singular artist, and she really means it on this record as well. Like, so yeah, for that reason, like, love it, big fan.
Björk.
Björk as well. Yeah, that's actually how you say it.
I'm gonna pick Brian Eno's first album. I wanted to pick Another Green World, but it's on your website. You have it and you don't. This is an incredible album, and his first, all of his albums are great. I'm a massive Eno fan. His first four are kind of his vocal albums, and this one is particularly raw. Just after he abruptly quit Roxy Music, he made this as supposedly as a non-musician, but it kind of seen as like in his first few albums, which is kind of early form of sampling, that he had a kind of lucky where he was getting like some of the best musicians in the world. Robert Wyatt, he has one of my favourite guitar players ever on this is Paul Rudolph, plays with the Pink Fairies and stuff. He would get them to play and jam and then basically manipulate their tracks together to put his own vocals over, and piece together an album, but like this is just, it's pure raw kind of punk. And like even the opening track, Needle in a Camel's Eye, he's a massive Velvet Underground fan, and it's literally a mirror of Waiting for Your Man, but in an amazing way with phased double track drumming and stuff like that. It's really is a beautiful album. I did want to pick a different album, but if anyone's to be recommended anything by Eno, definitely get his first album, Here Come the Warm Jets, or any of his albums, but for vocal albums, this one is a particularly good.
Animals is just amazing. Like I've older bros, they gave me this album, and like out of all the Pink Floyd albums, it's really struck a chord with me. It's just like, it's great. It's kind of like, you can't really get more concept album than Animals. It's really concepty. It kind of starts off with a kind of low kind of songs with Pigs in the Wing and that, and then finishes off with Pigs in the Wing too. Like it's really concepty. It's really Pink Floydy, but it's just so accessible as well at the same time. I think out of like all the Pink Floyd albums, this has been the most influential, I think. Like when you look at bands like Pond and you look at bands like Tame Impala and that kind of stuff, they're definitely taken from this, they're ripping off this record. It's kind of like, Roger Waters kind of in the height of taking over the whole band, really, and just kind of like having his own kind of singular music direction. So like, I don't know. Do you like Roger Waters?
And it's London's version of Pillbag Towers.
And it's London version of Pill.
They've got three. They've got three of them, but there could be a fourth one behind there.
That's record.
Yeah.
Good record though. Great record, in fact.
The Animated Egg. I don't really know much about this. I know that the guitar player is like, would make movies, like kind of like score stuff for movies and stuff like that. But the only thing I know about this is that Billy Preston plays on it. Who, if anyone, and he plays organ on a documentary that loads of people are into at the moment. But yeah, no, I bought this ages ago, and I was like, I purely bought it on the cover, and I can't actually remember the guy's name. I know there's Antonio Androssi or something like that just like a lot of kind of score music, and this is the same kind of guy, and for the life of me I can't remember his name. I should have Wikipedia'd this before I came in. But yeah, I just saw that there and I was like, I've actually been digging this. I bought this ages ago, and I've been digging this a lot. It's very like 60s swing and groove, Hammond organ kind of stuff, and it's obviously because of Billy Preston. Is really making the album swing. So I would, if anyone's in Tower for a measly $26.99, buy this.
I'm out.
Oh, yeah? Okay, so this is the Animated Egg. This is Silver Apples, and I have this album, I've known this album a long time, but I know that Gaz in the band and Hugh have recently bought this, and they're really digging this album at the moment. You're just picking out albums? There's a record player there. Yeah, so this is Silver Apples, and Simeon, interestingly, who plays the Simeon, which is like a homemade synthesizer thing with oscillators and tape machines, and it's like if you actually just Google Simeon and Silver Apples and look at the contraption of a machine he made, it's like a big board with tape machines and preamps and everything just kind of lying out, and it just makes this like kind of pulsating sounds. It's kind of non-music. He plays keyboards, but it's a lot of kind of sounds and pulses, and just an amazing drummer, Dan Taylor, who just, there's a real kind of jazz swing to it. It's really repetitive. It's kind of, it sounds, you would expect it to be Can, you'd expect it to be, krautrockers in that vein, but it's an absolutely incredible album, and I'm picking this one out because I know the lads are rocking out this lately, so.
Big Aphex fan. This album as well, like Here Because You Do, is just excellent. Like it's deadly for me, like my kind of relationship with like instrumental music is just like, you can kind of like put your own kind of like emotions over it, whereas like with vocals it kind of like leads you that way. you know, and it's just...
So you hate it because you can't sing on it?
I hate it because, like, yeah, I can't sing on it. I only like albums
You know what would go well on that?
I hate other singers, yeah. Other singers, I'm like, they're shit. This is great.
Or you could say something deadly over that.
I could put something amazing over that. Way better over fucking Animals. But yeah, so this is just a great album. It's really cool. It's like, you know, Irish artists as well, of course. And I think once you, like, this is kind of a bit of a, like, in for Aphex Twin. Once you kind of, like, get into Aphex Twin, there's, like, so much more. All the ambience works stuff is amazing. Like, he's really, really prolific as well. Puts out loads of stuff, like all that Tunnel, I can't think of it. Stuff is great, and it's deadly for, like, tripping balls as well. Are you allowed to say tripping balls? Yeah. Because I'm not saying what I'm tripping balls off. Could be tripping balls off life. Who knows? But this is defo pick this up. How much is it? $24.99 as well. Look at that. Bargain. My name is Owen.
Robbie.
And I'm in a band called Melts, and our album Maelstrom is out now, and it's one of the Tower recommends, which is sound of them, and yeah, boy, you'll enjoy it. Nice.